Hi guys, welcome to In the Know episode 5. We're joined today by Ciaran Savage from
Got it.
CIP, Card Industry Professionals.
Oh, I got it.
Welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, do you want to start off just by telling us a little bit about Card Industry Professionals and yourself?
Yeah, so I started Carnage Professional CIP in 2017. It's our 5th birthday in about 2 weeks' time.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's quite a good milestone, isn't it, to get to your 5th
Yeah.
birthday. I think people say in business, if you get past year 1, year 2, if you get to your 5th birthday. But I think part of our mentality is that the projects we work on, the products we release, the partnerships, it always does still feel like a startup. It still feels like year 1. So I think that's it's sort of aided our growth. It's aided sort of the harmony between the team and the passion between the team, and we've got a real loyal team with us. But yeah, it started in 2017 because I've sort of grown up around the industry. We'll maybe touch on that in a few moments. But I felt like merchants, independent merchants, SMEs, your florists, your salons, your butchers, your news agents, there needed to be more transparency around payments up front. And then actually post-sale, there needed to be more support ongoing for merchants because they're busy people. They just need the education. They need the support. They need reliability. And I just knew growing up around the industry and some of the names and the competitors and the products they had where maybe they did lack on either post-sale support or like actually being transparent up front. And I felt like I could use my knowledge and experience already. I was 26 when I started CIP. And my knowledge and experience to build a company, build a brand, and leverage that brand and that growth to attract other resellers and other partners that could get that message across to merchants. And we could be transparent and we could give that after support. So that was the idea really, and it was just getting started really. And that wasn't investment, that wasn't having lots of support behind me. It was just saying, well, I'm going to leave my full-time role in the industry in a telesales office. I'm going to start a company. I'm just going to walk around with my backpack and get started. And then it's sort of grown, month over month, week over week, from there, and now nearly 5 years on. So then here we are.
What was it? Was there like a moment where you just said, right, that's it, I'm going to do that? Or was it, I'm guessing it was obviously something you had in mind for a long time, but was there kind of that moment where you just said, right, that's it, I'm going to
Yeah, it was more, I'd felt for the people I was working for, I'd felt like I'd been disregarded and sort of glossed over. I'd sort of gone out my way. I'd used my own initiative to say to the management team and one of the senior managers, it'd be great if we could focus a little bit more on a social strategy and get this company's brand growing and engaging on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. I think there's a real opportunity there. And I sort of did this sort of presentation, put a deck together, and then I just never heard from it. No one came to knock on the door of the telesales room or said that was great or can we chat about it more. He was just kind of forgotten. And the manager at the time wasn't very reliable and wasn't quite consistent. And it just felt like everything was going against me. Goalposts around commission earnings were changing. And it just got to a point where I remember speaking to my mum, who's been in the industry since 1997, and saying, here's where I am. I'd love to build a brand. I think I can do it. And she just sort of just encouraged it, actually. She was like, yeah, I think you could. Helped me with a few contacts that she had. And then we just had to get started, start a company, get a business bank account, get a website, get the social pages. I started by just actually getting all that done with a co-founder who was working at the company with me in the telesales office, because I just thought, I need a bit of support. I was speaking to somebody and he was in a similar mindset and he said, yeah, I think I'd like to do that too. So we were doing things in our evenings, weekends, getting things prepped, but then working full time in the day. And then that was in the August, by the October, we'd both left our full-time positions. And it was the beginning of actually how you make it work, how you get some revenue in, how you order business cards, how you put revenue back into growing this company. And yeah, unfortunately, that it was a difficult Christmas. You'd stopped having a regular salary. We had no savings or investment. You were just trying to get revenue in to put it back into the business. And over that Christmas period, like my co-founder at the time just found it too difficult. He was like, by the February, March, he was like, I can't hack this. Like, I'm going to move back in with my parents or whatever. I'm going to get a full-time job. I'm going to come off as director. But for me, it's just, it was never a doubt in my mind. I just knew that it wouldn't be an overnight success. And I knew that I could keep persevering month in, month out. And I didn't have a lot to lose in the first place. I was coming from a base salary with commission. As long as I was just getting by and covering my house bills or my half the house bills at the time, I was fine. I'll just keep going, because at some point it's bound to keep growing. It's bound to get to a point where I've got a salary or a sensible salary, but that might be a few years away. But I'm not going to go backwards and go get a full-time job for somebody and be back on that part of the ladder. I didn't think I could climb the corporate ladder. I didn't really want to climb the corporate ladder. I'd, like that experience of that meeting and sitting with them and trying to show sort of my enthusiasm, and I wanted to be taken seriously or become a team leader or a manager, and it felt like I wasn't going to be given that opportunity anytime soon, or you had to be really persistent. And I just felt, no, actually, if I just go off and start the brand and just persevere, I'm the creative director, I'm in control, I'm seeing where the funds are allocated, and I'm sort of in charge of my own destiny, really. And that was what I enjoyed. So to go back to get a full-time role would just strip all that away. And that was, that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, that resonates probably with Pete as well, because we kind of set up, we didn't want to move away to like Manchester, Media City or London or whatever, and we wanted to stay where family was. And for us, it was the same thing. It was like we set up with no savings, no money or anything, just an SLR camera. And we had no idea about business or sales or anything.
The little milestones that are really daunting at the time. How do I become a director?
Yeah.
What does that mean in terms of responsibility? How do I file the accounts? How do I become VAT registered? What does that mean? Like all these little things that you tick off and you just take it in your stride one step at a time. You might get some guidance or some support from a local accountant or somebody in business that or a family member, but actually they're not that daunting. It's daunting at the time, but you just take it in your stride, and then you look back a few years later and you've been a director.
We always say that, don't we? It's like, whenever like take on the first member of staff or something.
The first member of staff, the first commitment, the first
like,
payroll day. Pay somebody else. Like, oh wow. Yeah, I think like payroll for us is the 25th of the month, which was Monday. It's the first time that I think there's 25 people on payroll.
Wow.
And I was just like, okay, it's a bit more serious now. It's like you start to see, when it's gone from just you. And I think at the time when I first started, because we're still sort of talking on the origins of it, it was, I can't take any money. I'm just going to have to live off credit cards and just cover my half the bills over Christmas and things. Then as you get a bit of revenue, it was like, what's the minimum amount I can take before I have to pay tax, national insurance, which was at the time like 600 and something pounds a month.
Yeah.
You could take that. So that's what I was taking for 12 months. And then it was like, right, am I in a position now to take £1,200 a month and pay a bit of tax or £1,500? And I think it's that progression that really helps you appreciate it and see as you are scaling, as you are growing, as now there's 25 people on payroll, 30 people in a few months of, that at least you can recognize where you've come from, and the eye on the detail of the costings and payroll. It's not just like taken for granted. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that it's all like really easy to accept as well.
I think it's that what you said's great, because it's typical of that like entrepreneurial mindset where if you sort of look at everything in front of you all as one thing, right, I need to do all these things before the business is viable. I think that's why a lot of people don't take the step, because it's overwhelming. But I think kind of what you said there is similar to us. It was like we just kind of dove into it with that sort of passion,
that mindset, that passion, that just moving forward. I don't know what you guys, like you said there, like the cheapest camera you could get, the cheapest office space.
It was like literally one that I bought with a student loan.
Student loan. It's like with my
I
remember, because I spoke about this in Lincoln last month at City Tribe, just at the drill, just speaking about the journey. And my shopping bill to set the company up was £105. It was like companies made simple, using Fiverr to get a logo, free social pages, a free business bank account you had to apply for. Like, then you've got the bones of a company. You're a director on a company with a bank account with social media pages, and you've got email accounts and things. The domain for 123 Reg, 20 quid for the first year or two. It came to £100, and most people have £100 at the end of a month, or could spend it on a night out or a weekend out or whatever. It's just, it doesn't mean that then you're a business. Like, you've got the bones of a business, you're ready to go. You can generally send out invoices, or you can put out posts as a brand. Then it just takes consistent effort week in, week out, showing up day in, day out, even in the early days when you're getting no emails back. But I always saw it as like the long-term vision. I always had the growth mindset that it's bound to grow year over year. Like, if we're showing up or we're doing it, there is a product there that's necessary for merchants, and there's lots of opportunity to support merchants with card payments. We build on the credibility, we build on the trust pilot, we build on the case studies, we build on our own team by recruiting and encouraging people to join the journey, and it will just grow momentum. But I think some people struggle with that initial either outlay and think it's going to cost thousands and they need investment, or will do it, and because they don't see early traction, think they need to go get another business, like another role, or start a new business, or it's just not going to work. And unfortunately, I see it quite often where people I know, like in the industry, or people I've seen online, will set up a company, and it looks like they feel like they've already hit the jackpot in year one, and you see them getting the car on lease, or the fancy days out, or trying to do a corporate day, or trying to do a sponsorship of a club or something. And I just think, when I think back to year one, year two, like, there was nothing left in revenue. Like, the revenue was going on just business day-to-day running expenses. There was nothing left.
That's what it was like for us, wasn't it?
Like, I'm laughing to myself because I'm thinking I had an old Honda Civic that when we set up the business, and we went everywhere up and down the country in that, full of gear and stuff, and I ended up doing about 200,000 miles in it.
It's a necessity,
it was
wasn't it?
still going a bit, but I was like, right, we need something more reliable now, because it broke down a couple of times, and that's when we kind of just had enough money to get a lease car. But it is just that kind of, but then it was like, I think for us it was like enjoying the journey at that point as well. Even though we didn't really have much money, it was kind of
that resonates. Because I've had quite a bit of advice from founders and through the Forbes community, and 2040, that's UK based down in London. That's a community of entrepreneurs and founders and people at different stages of their career, but there are quite a few exited founders, or people that have been acquired, or people that have like seen their venture come to fruition, that whole journey. And they consistently say that the journey was the exciting part, and like, it isn't the be all and end all if you get acquired or you sell. Well, it can be difficult. It's like, I don't need to go on my emails now, but I want to, because I've checked them every day for 5 years, but I can't even access that email anymore. It's really weird, really strange phenomena. Everyone's working towards that, or the potential of that, and then when it happens, actually it's like, oh right, now what? And but that journey part, the frustration, or the upsets, or the hard work, or the letdowns, or the month in, months out, or the little wins are the ones that they remember the most, as opposed to the day they got bought, or the day they raised loads of money, or whatever. That's not as important to them. So I think that's quite, that's on my mind a little bit at the minute, is to try and appreciate the little moments, appreciate the journey. And that is really difficult to do when you're constantly looking ahead, and you're constantly moving forward. I feel like my mindset, and it always has been this, is always 6 months in the future. I'm always like, I already know what the rest of 2022 looks like for CIP, our projects, our partnerships, what we're launching, how our revenue should get to because of the growth in the sales we hit. So I'm already thinking 2023, and what do we do next year? I think that's quite important, that you're able to look ahead and make plans ahead, and you're always in that growth mindset and pushing yourselves. But that makes it tricky to appreciate today. And actually, that's part of like why I've started getting into more video content and sharing the journey online on LinkedIn and YouTube and things, is because 4 years, 4 to 5 years has gone by without being consistent with any content, and so many milestones have been hit. We've moved offices so many times, we've grown a team so many times, we've closed the funding round. Those, if I don't start capturing content now or doing podcasts or doing vlogs, then another 4 years will go by and there'll be no content to show for it. But there's so many moments on that journey that will go in 4 years' time. I remember that day when we went to Israel, which is crazy. But
what's been your favourite? What's been your favourite moment?
Actually, moving from the first office we had to the office we're now in, because we actually were able to spend time at the end of last year renovating the space and making it suitable for our team's growth. And it wasn't just the growth of how many people you can fit in, is because it's got a boardroom, it's got a coffee breakout area, it's got a kitchen. It's like before then we were in like a business site where there's lots of tenants and you've got a shared little galley kitchen and communal toilets, but actually now being a space that's all of ours and it's just staff members and team members can break out and get away from their desk. And that's quite one of the proud moments, because I think that's that's set us up for a strong year and a strong few years. And then just probably like little wins, really, like little wins with the team, and just seeing us get like some of the things where we've been nominated as finalists for awards in the industry. It's like that industry recognition. But like focus on the team, so like Team of the Year at the UK FinTech Awards. That's because we're building a team, we're shaping a team, educating a team. From my experience, and Lynn, who's our operations director's experience, who's also my mum, and John, who's sales director. Our experience of the industry, we're passing that on and helping to nurture and build the next level of management under us that have the same morals, same values, same aims and ambitions. So actually when it's a collective award or nomination, that's like, so we are on the right track, we're on the right path, and we're doing it well. So they're probably the little things that you'll remember.
What's the growth of the business been like since Kenny started?
Like it doesn't necessarily matter, but in terms of the amount of merchants we support, has gone from me getting the first customer in Brigg, not far from here, all the way through to now. We support well over 4,000 businesses in the UK with payments, and they're taking payments every second of a day. And like we process, north of 30 million a month now on card. It's like, well, that's great, but the aim for us is just to support as many merchants as possible. Can we continue to support thousands more in the UK? Could we also support merchants in other markets, so that you're taking that same aim as a company and supporting local communities, local businesses in Ireland or somewhere further afield? And that's sort of, for me it's like, it's great that we've got to this point from being me in a backpack walking around. That's great, but it's still so early in the journey, and it's just like the start. That is, to me, it's like we haven't achieved anything yet. So that, like, in terms of revenue numbers and things, it's like first year is me in a backpack, like 30 grand, like just doing sales and trying to spend it, put it into different things. And then I think it was 300 odd thousand and 700 odd, and then 1 point something million. This year will be closer to 2 million.
Well, the first year when you turned over, when the turnover hit $1 million.
Well, 7 figures. It's interesting moment, isn't it? Because you don't.
I've never been there, so.
I don't mean like that. But it's like, it's revenue. Like, revenue is vanity, so a lot of that revenue goes out in hardware and commissions and on office expenses, and we're growing the team and payroll. So if it was $1 million in profit, I'd be really happy. It's not. It's revenue through the door, which is great. It's allowed us to grow the team. It's allowed us to put back into the company's growth. But you can get carried away by it. And there's other people that are maybe on the other side of that maybe it's just it's not in me, or the way I see it, or I've been raised. And maybe I need to be a little bit more like it in the future. But actually to put that out there and be confident and be like assertive, like we've hit like 7 figures in revenue, like we're at this stage, or we're growing at this. And you see it online quite a lot, where people are pushing their achievements or their milestones, and sometimes you can see through it and think that's not accurate, or that's not correct. And so I've just never really had the conviction to be that person. and I see where some people then get ahead by being like that because they come across really confident and outgoing and extroverted and like here's the scale and the growth we're achieving. But for me, it's not really been one that I've wanted to do or be like. But
yeah, I mean, for me personally, like if I kind of admire that you're focused on what you need to be focused on and not kind of
not that.
I see a lot of people on social media. Some of them are like super confident and outgoing and in a kind of good way. People like Gary V and stuff. I do like watching his content.
I like how, like with Gary Vee, though, it's very much, the growth's there, the revenues are there, but it's always been about like the mindset and trying to encourage people and be pleasant to people, be supportive of people, give feedback constructively without tearing people down or being like. So there's other like examples for me of people in business that are doing great that aren't taking that approach, that are being more relatable, being more laid back about it, and people like Ben Francis at Gymshark. You can't imagine the growth and what goes on in the numbers and the finances there, but he's quite laid back, down to earth, and a genuine lad that started a business from scratch on his own, from a bedroom or whatever.
It's a great story.
So it's a great story, and they're the type of entrepreneurs really that should be looked up to by the next generation and should be aspired to be like. Because you don't need to necessarily be this alpha male, this dominant person that's putting out loads of like, we all see it on social media. You see the people that are trying to get the attention from like the Love Islands and that type of personality or persona, or try to come across like that. But actually in business, you have to be so adaptable and you have to get along with so many personality types that you couldn't be that person all the time. You wouldn't get people to buy into the journey and you wouldn't be able to run a team effectively, because you'd be so self-centered and you'd push people away.
There's people like we were fortunate enough to work with Miley in class once on a shoot, and since then we've like followed her social media and stuff, and like she's an example of someone that's like very influential in like, she's like a mumfluencer, in fact, young mums up to maybe sort of middle age, and fashion and that kind of thing. Very, very influential, but it's kind of effortless. It's more kind of her sort of adding value to her brand through, she does a lot of music related stuff and a lot of videos teaching young women how to do DIY or things that have value, putting out content
and just
value.
putting her personality, not trying to change her personality, just being a genuine person that wants to give back and use a platform for good.
And I always think that's like has more weight than usually you can see through people who are just good at talking about things that don't really you don't ever see any work they do or any.
I think it's a tricky one to find a balance of, because then we all see more of that other type of person because they're so front and center and they put everything out there and they make it bold and make it big and they say, look at these achievements. And I think there's got to be, just consciously as like a society, really, we need to start leveraging and supporting and putting in lights to people that are the actual ones that are role models. They're actually giving back and they're actually putting the effort in the time and consistency. Because I think it'll ultimately lead to the next generation or future generations being a happier and healthier place and a better society for each other.
So the growth you've talked about is really, really impressive. What's your formula for that being? I know before you said that you're 6 months ahead, you've kind of got, is it that kind of forward thinking planning or what kind of?
I think, so with payments, I always knew that if I could get one merchant to trust me, and this happened even when I was 18 years old, I started the industry as a field sales rep. Even then I remember signing up some businesses in Lincoln, and like the business owners were in their 50s, and it's like they've been in business a long time. I'm here as an 18-year-old talking to them about payments for their business, and they trusted me and went with it, and it made me realize that I can come across and can build that rapport and that trust and leverage my experience. So I knew if I could get one business owner to trust me, then what I need to do with CIP is then get 100 plus of me around the country with similar work ethic, similar morals, similar transparency. And then we will just continue to grow, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just, it is a numbers game at the end of the day. You need people talking to merchants. We haven't thrown lots of money into digital marketing. We haven't had the resources. And even when we have trialed things, like lead acquisition, online sort of digital lead acquisition, it's always really competitive. It's always a race to the bottom against the corporate companies in the industry that have bigger budgets and spend it aggressively. And it's never where we've won. We've always won when we've had real conversations with merchants to analyze who their current supplier is, or tailor the right solution that they need for their business if they're accepting payments for the first time. And it's building that trust and rapport face to face in communities that's helped us win. And then we get referrals, and then usually, the merchants feel a little bit more bought in and supported, and they don't just jump to another competitor straight away at first opportunity. And there's a bit more to it. So I knew that would help us. Our model, like with payments, is one that can grow, and like we do training workshops every week. So we're really keen in the early days to make sure every week at the same time we'd have online training workshops that anyone could join. Like you send a CV and you apply to jobs, but then our recruitment team will talk to you and say, yeah, you're right we think you'd be great, you think you'd like it, come on to training. The main cost for us is to get them on training and have someone to run that session, enroll them if they send in ID documents and sign up and say, I want to be a sales rep with CIP or a sales agent. Get them enrolled. We, at our expense, will send business cards and leaflets to their address, and that's just one of the costs. So many people won't go out because it is daunting. It can be daunting at times, and getting sales face to face is difficult for anybody. And I've been there and done that myself, and it can be daunting. But so many of them will then not use those leaflets and business cards, but that's the outlay. And the ones that do and bring the business in and hopefully will stay with us for years to come will, cover the costs associated with those training sessions and the outlay that we've put into it. So we knew that if it was like a consistent weekly format, then we'd get a rhythm, we'd get consistency, we'd have people joining CIP every week, every month, and the team would grow. And so many of them will stay for the long term. Some will stay 6 months, some will stay a month, some won't go out at all. But that's the kind of model. So we make sure they're supported. We give them as many training workshops as they want. There's materials, there's videos recorded, there's leaflets, there's our support, there's regional sales managers, area sales managers. There's a bit of a hierarchy there for support. And then it's on the individual to actually put that to action. So I knew that it was, and then what we've done since is we've looked at it and we've decided actually we keep growing that channel. That's just got to keep growing week in, week out, and we just keep going. But also let's have some salaried sales reps in key regions or key cities that will be there 40 hours a week, and are sort of flag wavers in that town and city for CIP. And we, have more like rapport with daily reporting and things back and forth with them. And it feels like we're just like 4 years in at a point where our product suite, our partnerships are strong enough to be able to say to that salaried rep, you've got so many opportunities to close sales and sales opportunities here and support merchants in a key city that we're ready to commit monthly salaries. And before that, it was all commission-based commission roles. And for CIP, that was scalable because there's no outlay other than the business cards. Like if they don't bring a deal on, there's nothing to pay them. If they bring application and sales into us, we'll support them, we'll get it approved, get the card machine to the merchant, and they'll get a commission kickback. And then, we've covered the cost of the machine and the kickback from the sale that's been approved. So, that's kind of how the model works. But yeah, it definitely makes sense to have employed sales reps as well. So at the moment, we've got a team of 8, and there's going to be 9 with a regional sales manager, and we've got final interviews this week for another 4 to 5, so it should be up to a team of 10, 12, 13 by next month. And then it's analysing the data between the two types of teams later this year, and then seeing how it shapes your plan for next year.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a real well-formed model and growth forecast and model behind that. And it's my job, my role, because I'm not over sales day to day, I'm not over operations day to day. It's allowed me the ability to work on partnerships, work on new product releases, look at the vision of how we move forward and stay relevant and make sure that we're pushing the latest technology to merchants. So I have the opportunity to be out the office or have those meetings. And that's why my mind's always 6 months ahead to what we're going to launch, what products are going to be popular at the time, where are we going to be? Are we going to be in Ireland or in the UK and any other markets? So it's always looking at that.
Do you feel like, I know you had, when you set up the business, you said there was things that you wanted to deliver to customers that you felt weren't there with your previous employer, and what do you feel like that was something that you achieved quite quickly, or is it something that's just, obviously it's as with anything in business, it's always going to be ongoing and progressing, but is that something you were able to deliver straight away, or is it something you're still striving?
In the first year, it feels like we're very much there now, but it's quite interesting. It's slightly different now. But in the first year, we're working with one acquirer who we still work with today. An acquirer is like a bank, but it's not always Barclays, HSBC. There's other names in the industry that process the transactions in the background. And by the summer of 2018, so 1 year into CIB, I'd built a brand, I had sales, I had some Trustpilot reviews, I had some sellers up in Scotland, I had some in Manchester, I'd connected them with them online, we'd trained them, I'd gone up and met them in the car, driven to Scotland or whatever, and they were bought into CIP. They saw the same as me, it could be more transparent, they understood the values, they thought, for whatever reason, they felt that I could be leading a company and growing and scaling a company they wanted to work with, and that was great. And so I sat with Lynn and John. So Lynn's my mum and John is our sales director in the summer, and I said to them both, look, if you come into CIB at this point, we'll all be directors and we'll be equal shareholders. I was 100% shareholder and we'll go a third each. But in August, what we said is if we're going to go with that, we need to start the conversations with the different banks and the hardware manufacturers to get to this sort of position where we could tailor a solution and have USPs that could remove pain points for enough merchants. Like whenever a merchant has a pain point where it's about how quick they got their funds, it's about the cost of it per month. Like if you're somebody that's taking high ATV transactions and on credit cards over time, what's the rate? Is too expensive? Can we educate you on maybe a better solution? Things like in our industry, there's often PCI compliance on merchants' bills, which is it's like the data security storage each month, and you have to pay and you have to be compliant. You have to do an annual questionnaire, and so there's different headaches for the individual butcher or salon or a florist that they would see on their bill, and it would frustrate them, or they'd need their cash flow quicker. So it's like, right, if we have enough of the pain points covered by these different partners, then we can go in and say we can remove that pain point by recommending this product. So in the August 2018, we said we'll give ourselves 6 months around the kitchen table, and by the new year, we need to know who we're going to market with. We already had sales. We keep doing sales through that one acquiring bank, but who could we work with? And so, in Q1 2019, all three partners came on board, and we reached out to who we work with, Evo Payments and Elevon. I was approached by the UK sort of managing director of a company called iZettle that had just been bought by PayPal for 2.2 billion. And we spoke on LinkedIn, had a phone call and went to their office in London, and they said, yeah, we'd love to work with you and your knowledge of, and Lynn and John's knowledge of merchants and supporting merchants. They had, big budgets, a lot of cost was going on, online acquisition of Instagram ads and Facebook ads, and people would go online and sign up, and they were getting lots of florists, but then the florists weren't really using the card reader or knew how to use the app. So what they needed was people on the street to go in and demonstrate the app, demonstrate how to take a payment, make sure it arrived, train any staff if it was a cafe or a bar or a restaurant, and they felt that they could get that through a direct partnership with us. So yeah, we started all 3 partnerships in that Q1 2019, and now we're 3.5 years in with all of them. So yeah, we've built the partnerships with all 3 successfully. We work really closely with them. I think we're valued partners of all of them. And it meant that from that point, our sales reps could go in and say, it could be Evo, it could be Elevon, it could be Zettel by PayPal. It depends on what that merchant needs. Do they need an iPad tablet-based setup for their deli? Do they need their money next day? Are they getting sick of these additional charges on their bill that is giving them headaches or stress as a business owner? Let's remove that pain point. And then, as I saw it, and I think this is true, if we remove the pain point that the merchant's asking support for, that's what they've requested, then we were bound to receive positive feedback. So the 5-star reviews on Trustpilot, the case studies, the positive case studies come from was removing that pain point. And that was what we tried to do every merchant that we looked after. So that's helped sort of our growth and our trust in the industry and our reputation. And that's what we still do today. And we're still striving to build out the product suites and the new terminals. And actually from that point, it's moved a lot more away from how the banks operate and actually the type of hardware in the business. So now we were talking about some of the businesses here where it's like next generation of Android technology, touchscreen card machines, away from the push buttons on them or the green, yellow, red buttons that you see on most card machines. And it's actually just touchscreen Android based, and smart POS that can have integrations with accountancy software and different ePOS software. So that's becoming more prevalent, whereas a few, maybe 2-3 years ago, it was all about the costs and how fast they'd get their funds. So it's interesting that we have that ability to watch the market, have the data, and influence our products and the merchants we look after by having those relationships.
Do you think it's like, I guess it's an industry that's growing as well, because like we were having a conversation earlier about, it's kind of expected now that you can pay on card. People don't have cash.
Definitely with
that's
the rise of contactless, and people forget, like I talk about this sometimes, is the SMEs and the business we look after are always the late adopters. They can't risk going with a new bit of technology that's unproven or not reliable, or being the first in their community to do it in case it, for some reason, it doesn't go well, and they're so reliant on those consumers paying by card that day, and like that can affect their full month and payroll and stock and cash flow. So they're at the other end of a scale where you get like the corporates and the big chains, and there's a lot of innovation in fintech, a lot of innovation within POS terminals and e-commerce, and it's mainly aimed at the corporate sector, the hospitality and retail, where they will take a risk and they can afford to take a risk, but too much of the focus of young fintechs and new startups is on that sector, whereas it's the hundreds of thousands of SMEs and florists, butchers, salons that need the support and education. So yeah, it's quite important that like we continue to just focus on that demographic, and we don't get carried away with trying to get larger accounts and key accounts, because for me it's just the day-to-day focus is every village, every town, every city has those merchants, and someone we know, or a relative or family member, or just an everyday person that just needs a bit of guidance.
What's been the key things that you've learned like along the journey?
Definitely just to be reliable for partners. Like if you're valued a partnership, so if you're working with a company like PayPal, don't be inconsistent. Don't, like, too many times I've seen, and like everyone has to run their business how they want to run their business, but I'm in a position now where I'll have meetings with other younger startups now, or young entrepreneurs, or they're trying to get a product for us to work with or test and use our network, and they'll be a bit inconsistent, or they'll miss a meeting, or they'll be late, or they'll just like forget, and they'll email you before, and I'm like, I couldn't afford to do that in the early days, because relationships with people like PayPal and stuff, if you don't prioritize them and you're not on time, you're not consistent, you're not feeding back and being respectful to the people as well, then it's not going to continue to evolve and grow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then you can, over time, leverage that relationship and that rapport that you've built with them to support your growth, or your, you know, if you need an introduction, or you need a bit of support, or you need a bit of guidance. And that's probably like the biggest thing, is just that consistency, just being reliable, showing up, not letting people down. It gets more difficult as you get to this stage where you get so many requests for intro calls, or you know, people reaching out to you on LinkedIn and things, where you don't want to say no to everybody. You don't want to ignore people, like, because you appreciate them taking the time, but it becomes unmanageable. Whereas in the early days, I'd try to take as many intro calls as I could, just to build my network, build my community. It may leverage a partnership, it may be good for us. But then if you've said you're going to go to it, actually turn up or jump on that Zoom call. Don't miss it. Don't just give it a little short response like, I can't make it today, can we reschedule? So yeah, that's kind of the dynamic now, where I'm having to like look on the other side, where I'm like, well, I need to prioritize my time as well, and make sure we get stuff done. It's a little trickier.
Obviously, you've just been announced in the Forbes 30 under 30 in, is it the financial category?
In finance, so for Europe.
How did that kind of, do you want to talk us through that, how that came about?
It was quite strange. I got an email, and you get used to getting emails in your inbox from different names of different companies, people you haven't heard of before, people just wanting an intro call, like I just said. And I got one, and it was from a guy called Leonard, and it was a German surname, and I didn't recognize the person. And they said, I'm a reporter, a journalist for Forbes. You've been recommended as a potential candidate for this year's 30 under 30. Can you click on this link and fill out some information about yourself? And I looked at him straight away on LinkedIn. I typed his name in and thought, like, this isn't real. But it was. I saw his LinkedIn profile. He is a journalist. He's been at Forbes quite a few years. So I was like, okay, so I will fill out this link. And it was branded Forbes. It looked genuine. And there's big text boxes. You had to fill in a lot of information. Joe, where it's like, it needs to be a minimum of so many characters. I'm like, wow, this is like a page or two. I have to write this. But it was just talking about the growth, just how we started, the revenue figures, the partnerships we've got, plans for the future, our USPs as a company, and submitted all that. And I sent him a headshot. I couldn't upload it on the link, so I just said, I've done that. Here's a headshot. When will I find out if I made it? And he just came back quite quickly and was like, great, thanks. No, we don't tell anybody. Like, the list is always announced on early April. It's the 8th of April it'll be announced, and it's like, you're either in or you're out. Like, you'll find out on the day.
Wow.
So this was in February, so I had a couple of months before I'd find out. So you kind of just get on with business. It was cool speaking to family that I'd had this email back and forth and I'd been requested. I thought, well, that's good. That's like, you know, for a kid from Grimsby that's sort of in and around Lincolnshire that's trying to build this fintech company or work with payments and different merchants around the UK. It's good to be recognised, or at least highlighted. And then on the morning I was driving into work. I got into the car park at work, and I always check my emails when I get up, when I get into work, when I'm walking into work, just to see what's come in. And I saw like an email that I clicked on. The banner was congratulations, and it was like, dear Ciaran, like, you've been announced and like been included in this year's list, and like it was over 100,000 applicants. And so it was like amazing. And it was just from there, it was like you're added into a Slack group with Forbes, so all the listers around like the world that have been in the Forbes lists are in that Slack channel, so you can ask questions, you can get intros, you can find out things about other companies, and then you get invited to events quite regularly, so like the summits and things, like where we went to Israel this year. We were there for 5 days in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and that was like an annual summit. So it's really, really valuable community, I think, to be in and leverage. It wasn't expected. It was really cool, I think, for like the humble beginnings of where we're from, based in Lincolnshire. There's a lot of focus on companies, like you said earlier, move into a city. If you need to be in London, if you're in finance, or you need to be in one of the key cities. Out in Lincolnshire, you always have to try to explain where Lincolnshire is, or whereabouts. And you end up saying something like, it's up towards Yorkshire, if you know what Yorkshire is. Like, like, where is that? But I was always quite proud of where we're based, and it makes sense for us with the team we've got here, making sure that, you know, the way of life and everything is more relaxed here in Lincolnshire, and the outdoors. And I don't think we could work in the city centre of London or city centre?
That's what I was going to ask, actually. I was going to ask, because obviously for us, kind of, a lot of agencies and stuff are kind of located in cities, and we've always said maybe we do struggle a bit more kind of against where we're based. It is difficult to explain, isn't it? Kind of, and I was going to ask you about how you find your location.
I think maybe there's quite a few providers in our industry that their business model is built around a county or a geographical location.
Yeah.
And if this was the county you built it around, you're limited for options, because Lincolnshire doesn't have loads of cities. It doesn't have loads of merchants. You have to drive between towns or villages. So, yeah, but because the business model from day one was always, I want to support merchants around every town of the UK.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if we're based in London or we're based up in Scotland or we're based in Lincolnshire, where we actually live and grow, and it makes a sensible place for having an office, and costs and everything makes sense over here. So yeah, I think maybe in the early days there was that pressure, even like with registering the company initially with like an office address in London, things you're trying to come across like you're a professional, like you're a real company. And that over time has just completely shifted the other way, where I think maybe with people moving out of the city around sort of lockdowns and things as well, as maybe people realize, I can be based and work remotely, I can be based here, it doesn't mean so much. So for me, I think it makes sense to stay here and just continue working around the country. It doesn't affect it. But maybe for you guys as an agency, when you need like work in the area, then it's a different conversation if you're living in a Manchester or a London or something.
I think especially COVID sort of accelerated the growth of a lot of these platforms, like
definitely,
to communicate online and project manage online and stuff. So it's helped us break down some barriers, like business wise, but it's still really difficult. We're sort of running campaigns and things at the minute to try and reach agencies around the UK. We work with some, further afield anyway, but we just want to try and break into new markets, but it is difficult I think for some businesses, locality. But,
it can be.
But it's great. Yeah. Like Lincolnshire, I think it is overlooked a lot, but there's so many. We're fortunate to work with so many great businesses. That
there's
local.
Some brilliant business, some really strong business, like really successful businesses based in and around Lincolnshire. That actually. That we're quite proud, and the team at CIP are quite proud to be like in the category of one of the businesses growing and looking to employ more people in the region, because they've always seemed genuine. They've got great knowledge, they've got great skills, they've got great commitment, there's loyalty. They're not, if you're in a city, you're constantly being sort of like scouted, or like people trying to take you as talent or whatever, because there's so much choice. It's like, am I doing the right thing? But if you're in a business that's growing and scaling and is like treating people well and is close to where you live and everything, we find that it's worked well for us. So over the nearly 5 years, we've only had one person that's left the company, and that was because they wanted a role in a different department we didn't have a role for. So it's like, well, we don't want to hold you back if you want to go do that. But over the time, everyone's still on the journey.
A lot of that is obviously like the way you treat staff, as well as like company culture and stuff like that as well.
I think the transparency, I think giving people opportunities to grow in roles, develop in roles, see themselves in the future as that management level, the opportunity to get to that management level, actually knowing that we've got this startup culture still, like I said earlier, rather than be year 5, we still act like year 1. And so the new projects, new products, every quarter we say as a company, like when we get to the end of this quarter and we've launched this product, we've launched this incentive, or we've done this, we'll be able to just relax for a bit, and like it never happens. Like the next quarter's busier than that quarter, and it's always like, oh, how did we get ourselves into this position again? We said that we wouldn't be as, like have as heavy a workload, but it's just because you're all actually really motivated to keep growing and scaling and building, and that's quite powerful. And then people don't just jump off the journey because they feel like they're contributing, they feel appreciated, and hopefully as well. I was always really conscious when I was in my early 20s. I worked in office roles in our industry that were very much they treat you like a robot, and they like were watching your output, and like if you went on a break, on your lunch break, or you were 2 minutes late to work, or you felt like a child or a robot. You didn't feel like an adult. And I've always said I want to make sure the people that work for CIP or with CIP with me feel like a valued team member, feel like an adult. They don't get really like micromanage and watch their times and breaks and like silly things like that, but just resonate with me and how I hated my early 20s in that environment, because it just felt like no creativity, no like really like suppressed any sort of like creative ideas or the ability to grow in my role. And like I've never wanted that for CIP, and hopefully maybe because being a young founder or something, I'm bringing that mentality to
that
it,
kind of new mentality,
completely different to that corporate world of people that are now maybe in their 50s and 60s would have. It's a different dynamic.
Yeah, I think that's something that, again, with like remote working and that kind of thing, I think, and sort of expansion of this connectivity that people have now, I think that's moved away from that. Like even people who are in offices now, I think they kind of have more flexibility, and I think that's important in any industry. To give people a little bit of control.
It's like for us earlier this year, we moved the hours from like 8:30 start, it was typically, and moved it to 9 o'clock start, but kept the salary the same for everyone. Obviously moved out to the new office space that we've renovated to make sure there's more breakout areas, more spaces, more walking meetings in the countryside and getting fresh air. And even like little perks, like everyone having their birthday off, so you don't have to be at work on your birthday. It's just little bonuses, because it was like people have children, they need to get to school, they don't want to be stressed out, they need to be at work, and it's too, and like there has to be flexibility if there's people with doctor's appointments or things that come up with kids, or and it's just never been like, let's not penalise people and make them on the back foot all the time. Let's make them feel open and like trusted enough to be able to be honest with us. And then that loyalty comes because they realise they're in a strong, or they're comfortable in their position, or they feel quite happy. But like with the office, the argument between remote work and office work, we still have everybody in the office, because I find it so valuable that we bounce ideas off each other, like in this setting, where we're having a coffee, where we're in the boardroom, where we're just chatting at our desk, like between each other. There's so many decisions made day to day that through teams or people dotted around homes and like living rooms, or studies or whatever upstairs, it would be a lot more restrictive, I think. So I'm not like opposed to it, I'm really against it. Some businesses work fantastically with it. I just know as a young agile startup, we have so many important decisions to make day to day, that actually being as a group and together and feeling as a collective, we're all on the same wavelength and we're all aligned. And that helps with deadlines, it helps with projects, it helps with mapping out the future. So we encourage people to be office based, and I really like that. But obviously through COVID times, everyone was remote. But there's an argument where people say everyone should just stay remote, or you should be able to work fully remote. And it's not like some business can, but just for us, I would miss that interaction with the team and building rapport and seeing them build and grow as a person, as a personality, and grow into the position and take the responsibility, or want to become a manager and things like that. You can really see that like evolution in somebody when they come through the door and they're with you day to day. I think you'd miss that through a screen.
For us, like we're sort of 50-50, because it helps like with our industry to bounce ideas off each other, and that instant kind of communication and stuff that you get when you sat together definitely helps.
Any advice, if you've got any advice for any kind of entrepreneurs in kind of similar position to you, that sat in maybe this job and they kind of want to...
That was it. I always felt when I sat in that job, I always felt what could I lose here by going for it? If I go for it, actually, if I go for another job in the future on a salary or whatever, and I've shown that I had the entrepreneurial desire or the confidence to go for it, and I might have made some great connections through it, I'd learned quite a lot, then I'd be able to come into hopefully a higher paid position or a more senior position for another company. So I've got nothing to lose here. It's like I'm on a hamster wheel of waiting for payday. I'm not really enjoying my position. I feel sort of overshadowed by management. I'm not very sort of passionate. I'm not being like taken seriously in my role. Like if I've graduated, I'm in my early mid-20s, like I was like my mid-20s, it'd be like, go for it. And then some people, like everybody has to work out their own financial situation, their own relationship, their own, how it'll affect personal life and professional life and things. The argument for a lot of people is they aren't in a, like, well, it's okay for you, like you've done it, but I couldn't because I've got this commitment with this house, or I've got this commitment with this relationship, or we're getting married, or we're doing this. But the month that I set up CIP was the first mortgage payment I was making that month. Like we'd bought our house, we moved in the August, I set up CIP in the August. We'd been married a year. I had a son when I was 19, like for a previous relationship that I've got a great relationship with. He turns 12 this summer, he's going to secondary school. I'm 31.
Yeah.
So I had that child at 6 years old when I was starting a company that was looking up to me. I needed a bit of stability. I had a marriage at the time. I had a house and a first mortgage payment, and I still went for it. And so I didn't have it all figured. I didn't have investment. I didn't have it all guaranteed. But it just felt like if I took that effort, that initiative, whatever was going to happen, it'd be a net positive. Like the outcome would be better for me than just staying in that position. And I think just use YouTube, look at blogs online, look at vlogs online, watch things with, there's so many different videos that give you advice about setting up a company or starting a company or raising finance, or, there's so much to watch out there. Like Y Combinator do loads of talks with successful founders and partners at Y Combinator that help young startups, and they look at different scenarios in business, and they talk from their perspective and how they help other founders and how other founders react and how you should react. So just consume content. You've got it in your hand, like on a phone. You can spend your weekend watching it and making notes and thinking of your own plan, but at the end of the day, you've just got to get started. So if you get started, you've got something to grow.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it was a great snippet of advice there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me.
Cheers for popping in.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Thank you.